Hey guys, it's Bill from Linden, Tennessee. What are we doing here? I'll tell you. My throttle feel, my drivability is terrible. And a couple weeks ago, I pulled these two wires off here. Those are from my throttle potentiometer over there. And whenever you sweep these with an ohm meter, or whenever you put an ohm meter on this and then sweep the throttle, it should give a nice change in resistance from 0 ohms to 5 ohms, or maybe 5k ohms or something. It doesn't do that at all. It's very, very jumpy, and it kind of makes sense that the throttle action is very erratic because garbage in, garbage out. So I got a new throttle, a new potentiometer, but in order to get it, I got to take all this stuff apart. And the biggest challenge of this build has always been, by far, accessibility and getting all this packaged in here nice and tight so you can't see any of this stuff. But consequences, it's hard to do anything with, and I'm trying to remove the minimum amount of stuff in order to do that, but I can't get to any of that stuff. So what's going to end up having to happen, I'm going to have to take this whole panel off, which means I got to scoot this whole back frame bodywork back so that I can get that center piece out. And so all that. And while I got the battery out, I'm going to go ahead and take this tray out, and I'm going to get this motor out because it's not doing anything. I can have it for something else. I don't even know what yet, but anything is better than having it just sit there, being weight. That's a very expensive weight. So, and that's going to leave me with two high voltage leads that are on a variable ramp with my little potentiometer on the dashboard, this here doohickey. And so I could conceivably put a front ePTO like I have on Arty, or I could put a more beefy speed control like this one. So if I wanted to run, say, a front brush hog or a front finish mower, then I could use that to power it instead of that little bitty speed control. And that way, if my front mower pulls a lot of power like this belly mower did, then that would kind of be okay because it would be running through a speed control. And if it's a 60-inch wide front mower, then that's fine if it pulls a whole bunch of power because I can cut the grass 50% faster. And if it pulls 50% more power, then it's the same, kind of the same amount of work has been done and grass has been cut and all that stuff. So anyway, coming to the realization that I'm not going to be able to do this in a nice simple way, so I'm going to go ahead and slide this back body and get the thing apart further, and I'll get that throttle pot out. Then okay, that's it for now. And just for my own sanity check to make sure I'm not crazy and not going to do a bunch of work for nothing, here's my new potentiometer, and as I increase it, the resistance just goes up steady. At 3.99 ohms, it switches over to a different setting, so it jumps there. And then when I get up to full, I got 4.75, and it just holds and stays there. And if I come back to say halfway maybe, and I'm just holding the throttle steady, 4.78, it just kind of holds there, and then let it go to the end. And at the end, it just stays there at 25, 24. So, and here's what the other one looks like. All right, this one I've got, that's the wires coming from the pot, and then I'll just use the foot throttle here, and we're starting at 11 ohms, and then you see how it just jumps all over everywhere. It's just not smooth. And I'll go ahead and run it all the way up to full. That's full right there. Now I'm just holding it steady, and it's actually holding steady now. It wasn't doing that before, but now if I come back to about half throttle and just hold it there. I'm not moving this at all, but it's still kind of jumping around. But anyway, it's just not smooth. Now if I had any sense, what I'd have done is I'd have used this new throttle potentiometer when I had all this together connected, and then just held it in my hand to see if that smoothed out my drivability, because, you know, now that I'm committed to doing this, if I get that all back together and it's not any better, and it turns out it's in the programming of the controller, I'll be a little bit annoyed, but that's all right. Yeah, now I've just released it, and you can see we started at 11 and now we're at 400, and now it's at 30, 24. It's just all over the place. So I'm pretty sure that that's my problem. So, okay. Well, alrighty. I got her all mostly put back together. Kind of have to go back on what I said a little while ago about how difficult it is to work on. Once you kind of know the sequence of how to take things apart, and assuming that I put it all back together correctly, it's actually pretty easy to do. Yeah, and in doing this, I found a couple bolts that never got tightened, and you can't see them in a million years. You can, maybe you can. Come on, where you at? It doesn't matter. They're over there, and they are it's a little distribution block coming from the battery, so it was loose, like pretty loose, and not only is that potentially like a nut could fall off and then lose power completely, but it's also a source of resistance and heat, so that's no good. I'm glad I found that. Got the new potentiometer in there. I had to actually modify a tool because this is the old one, but there's little bitty tiny 1032 screw nuts that go right there, and you can't just fit a normal 3/8 socket in there. So I had to take this guy over to the lathe, and it's really hard, so none of my tooling would cut through it. So I just got my angle grinder and a 60 grit or a 36 grit pad and just ground it away until kind of the minimum so that it would fit in there and get to my little nuts. So that's something I had to do. This is a leftover bolt, and I'm not really sure where it goes. That's not cool. I don't really know where that goes. Anyway, but I took the motor out of there, so we are just single motor now. And wouldn't it be cool if I had another tractor that is next on the list that I needed a motor for? This is actually a really, really solid motor too. It's got extra brushes in it, and it's designed to maintain a higher amp load than the one that's driving Mona here. It's actually designed to run 200 amps continuous, and that works out to about 10 horsepower. And then it'll peak at like 17 or 18, or maybe more, I'm not really sure. But since the 644, my case that is next, is hydraulic, it's just going to run, I mean, mostly just going to run at a solid full-on speed all the time anyway. And yeah, so that ought to work out pretty good, actually. Still got to put the little nuts on the bottom of the battery box to hold it down, and my little jump cables, and put the center console and bolt the back end down, and then I can go test it, see if it made a difference. So, all right, we'll talk to you later. All right, guys, got her all buttoned up, put back together, and I can't show you on the camera, even if I could take it out for a ride. You just can't see, but it's so much smoother now. Before, with that other potentiometer telling the controller 300 ohms, 500, 600, 1000, 1200, 100, 200, it just made the motor kind of jittery, and it was really, I don't know, it wasn't very comfortable. I got used to it, but now that it's right, you can definitely tell, and it's very, very nice. So that was really a good thing to have done. And as it turns out, it was for more than just that. Like I said, I had those bolts that were loose, tightened those down so it's got good electrical connection, and I checked everything else while I was in there. So that's pretty cool. And got some space up in front now. I took it over to sort of a kind of a steep hill, sort of like a bank. Stopped it in the middle of the bank, sort of rolled back a little bit, and then gave it to Beans just to see what would happen. And it just spun out those turf tires. Now, if I had the ag tires on there, maybe it would have got enough traction to pull the front end off the ground. But that's not what this thing is all about. This is just for pulling the lawnmower around and looking cool, which I think it does. And I think those turf tires, their sidewalls are not as stiff as the ag tires were. So I think it does absorb some of the bumps of the lawn better. So that might just be in my mind, but whatever. My mind is my mind. And okay, I think I'd take care of it. Thanks for watching, guys. We'll see you next time.